The golden rays of the setting sun painted the vineyards in hues of amber and gold as Alex pulled his car into the gravel parking lot of Willowbrook Estate Winery. The picturesque landscape stretched before him, rows upon rows of meticulously maintained grapevines cascading down gentle slopes, their leaves rustling softly in the evening breeze. The main building, a restored 19th-century stone farmhouse, stood proudly against the backdrop of rolling hills, its windows glowing with warm, inviting light. Alex had been looking forward to this visit for weeks, a small reprieve from the chaos his life had become. The winery had been recommended by a colleague who knew of his passion for fine wines and his recent need for solitude. As he stepped out of his car, the crisp autumn air carried the sweet, earthy aroma of ripening grapes, mingled with the distant notes of classical music drifting from the tasting room. It was exactly what he needed, a place far removed from the city, from memories, from her. Taking a deep breath, Alex adjusted his jacket and made his way toward the entrance, hoping that the promised exceptional wines would provide at least a temporary distraction from his thoughts. The wooden sign swinging gently above the door read, "Tasting Room," in elegant, hand-painted script, welcoming visitors to sample the fruits of the vineyard's labor. Alex couldn't help but smile. There was something comforting about the rustic charm of the place, a stark contrast to the sleek, modern restaurants and bars he frequented back in the city. Inside, the tasting room was a symphony of sensory delights. Exposed wooden beams crossed the ceiling above, while stone walls lined with oak barrels created an atmosphere of rustic elegance. Soft jazz played in the background, complementing the gentle murmur of conversation from the scattered groups of visitors. Crystal glasses caught the light from iron chandeliers, sending prisms of color dancing across polished wooden countertops. The air was rich with the complex bouquet of opened wines, notes of blackberry, vanilla, and oak intermingling in an intoxicating perfume. Alex found himself relaxing almost immediately, the tension in his shoulders beginning to ease as he approached the tasting counter. He hadn't realized just how much he needed this escape until this moment. The past 3 months had been a blur of sleepless nights and mindless workdays following Emma's departure. Their 5-year relationship had ended not with a dramatic fight, but with a quiet conversation that somehow hurt even more. "We've grown apart," she had said, as if their love had simply faded like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Wine had always been their shared passion, something they explored together, and Alex had avoided vineyards since the breakup. But tonight, he decided it was time to reclaim this pleasure for himself. As Alex settled onto a bar stool at the tasting counter, he glanced around at the other visitors, couples mostly, leaning into each other, sharing observations about the wines they sampled. A familiar pang of loneliness threatened to surface, but he pushed it away, focusing instead on the wine list before him. The selection was impressive: limited production vintages, reserve bottles, and experimental blends that weren't available in retail stores. This was exactly why he had come here, to experience something unique, something that might awaken his senses again. Alex was studying the description of a particularly intriguing Cabernet Franc when a voice broke through his concentration. Warm, slightly husky, with an undercurrent of enthusiasm that immediately caught his attention. First time at Willowbrook? Looking up, Alex found himself momentarily speechless. The man behind the counter was arranging glasses with practiced efficiency, but his smile was anything but routine. It reached all the way to his eyes, crinkling the corners in a way that suggested he smiled often and meant it every time. He appeared to be in his early 30s, with tousled dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck and an easy confidence that seemed natural rather than practiced. "Is it that obvious?" Alex replied, returning the smile despite himself. "Let me guess. I have that deer-in-headlights look that screams wine novice." The man laughed, a rich sound that seemed to warm the air between them. "Not at all. More like someone who appreciates good wine but hasn't discovered our little corner of paradise yet. I'm Jamie, by the way, assistant winemaker and your guide to all things Willowbrook this evening." Jamie wasn't what Alex had expected in a winery employee. There was none of the pretension that often accompanied wine expertise, no rehearsed spiel about tannins and terroir. Instead, as he poured the first tasting, a crisp, aromatic Viognier, he spoke about the wine as if introducing a friend. "This one's a bit of a rebel," Jamie explained, his eyes alight with genuine passion. Our vineyard manager wanted to pull these vines 3 years ago, said they weren't worth the trouble. But our head winemaker insisted we give them one more season. Then came the hottest summer on record, and suddenly these struggling vines produced the most concentrated fruit we'd ever seen. He pushed the glass toward Alex. Sometimes the things that fight the hardest end up having the most character. Alex took a sip, letting the wine linger on his palate. Notes of apricot and honeysuckle unfolding with surprising complexity. It's beautiful, he admitted, genuinely impressed. Completely different from what I expected. Jamie's smile widened. That's what I love about wine. It's full of surprises if you're willing to look beyond the label. There was something in the way he said it, a gentle emphasis that suggested he might be talking about more than just wine, that made Alex look at him more closely. Jamie moved with a graceful efficiency as he prepared the next tasting, his hands strong and capable, nails neatly trimmed. A silver chain disappeared beneath the collar of his burgundy shirt, which was rolled up at the sleeves to reveal forearms tanned from working outdoors. He was handsome in an unconventional way, not the polished perfection that graced magazine covers, but something more interesting, more real. As the evening progressed, Alex found himself sharing more than just observations about the wines. Between tastings, their conversation flowed effortlessly from wine regions they'd visited to books they'd read, favorite hiking trails, and even their mutual dislike of cilantro. Jamie had a way of listening that made Alex feel truly heard, a rare quality that drew him out of his shell. "So what brings you to our humble winery on a Thursday evening?" Jamie asked as he decanted a special Reserve Merlot, the ruby liquid catching the light as it cascaded into the crystal decanter. "Most of our weekday visitors are either locals or people celebrating something special." Alex hesitated, swirling the remains of his previous tasting in his glass. "I guess I'm neither. Just needed a change of scenery." He hadn't planned to elaborate, but something about Jamie's open expression made the words tumble out before he could stop them. "Ended a long-term relationship a few months ago. We used to visit wineries together, and I've been avoiding them. Decided it was time to stop letting those memories dictate what I do." Jamie's expression softened with understanding. First solo wine adventure, then. That deserves something special. He reached beneath the counter and produced an unmarked bottle, its cork sealed with dark red wax. "This isn't on the tasting menu. It's from my personal project, a small batch I made from a hidden corner of the vineyard. Only a few bottles exist." The gesture was unexpected and touched Alex deeply. This wasn't just good customer service. It felt like a genuine connection. The special wine was extraordinary. Layers of dark fruit, subtle spice, and something elusive that kept Alex returning to his glass, trying to identify it. "There's something in here I can't quite place," he admitted, intrigued. Jamie leaned forward, his voice dropping conspiratorially. "That's the magic of the North Slope. Those vines get morning fog that lingers until almost noon. Creates a microclimate that's completely different from the rest of the vineyard." His enthusiasm was contagious, and Alex found himself smiling more genuinely than he had in months. As they discussed the nuances of the wine, other visitors gradually filtered out of the tasting room, heading to dinner reservations or back to nearby hotels. Alex glanced at his watch, surprised to find that nearly 2 hours had passed. The tasting room was almost empty now, with just a couple lingering by the fireplace and an older gentleman making notes in what appeared to be a wine journal. "I should probably get going," Alex said reluctantly, though he made no move to stand. "I've taken up enough of your time." Jamie glanced around the nearly empty room, then back at Alex, something unspoken passing between them. "Actually, my shift ends when the tasting room closes in about 15 minutes. If you're not in a hurry, I could show you something few visitors get to see." Before Alex could respond, a bell chimed softly, and a voice announced that the tasting room would be closing in 15 minutes. The remaining guests began gathering their belongings, settling tabs, and making their way toward the exit. Alex felt a momentary panic. He wasn't ready for this unexpected connection to end, yet he hesitated to accept Jamie's offer. What exactly was being offered? Was he reading too much into a friendly interaction? Or worse, was he so desperate for connection that he was misinterpreting basic hospitality? Jamie seemed to sense his uncertainty. "It's just the barrel room and a peek at next year's vintage," he clarified, his tone casual, but his eyes searching Alex's face. "No pressure." Some people find the winemaking process interesting, but I understand if you need to head back. The sincerity in his voice made Alex's decision easy. I'd love to see it, he replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. I've always wondered what happens behind the scenes. Jamie's face lit up with a smile that made something warm unfurl in Alex's chest. Great. Let me just finish closing up, and we'll slip through the back. As Jamie moved around the tasting room, efficiently clearing glasses and locking the display cases, Alex watched him with growing curiosity. There was something compelling about Jamie beyond his obvious good looks, a genuineness that felt increasingly rare in Alex's experience. The last customers departed with friendly waves to Jamie, who locked the main door behind them and flipped the sign to closed. The sudden quiet was intimate, broken only by the soft clinking of glasses as Jamie completed his closing duties. Ready for the VIP tour? He asked, gesturing toward a heavy wooden door at the back of the room. Absolutely. Alex nodded, following Jamie through the door and down a short hallway that opened into a cavernous space filled with oak barrels stacked 3 high. The temperature dropped noticeably, and the air was heavy with the rich, complex aromas of aging wine and oak. Soft lighting cast the room in a golden glow, creating dramatic shadows between the rows of barrels. This is where the magic happens, Jamie explained, his voice taking on a reverent quality. Every barrel is like a tiny ecosystem, evolving and developing its own personality over time. He led Alex between the rows, occasionally stopping to extract small samples with a glass wine thief, a long, narrow tube designed to draw wine from the barrels without disturbing the aging process. This is from last year's harvest, Jamie explained, holding a glass of deep garnet liquid up to the light. Still young and a bit brash, but you can already taste its potential. He offered the glass to Alex, their fingers brushing momentarily in the exchange. The wine was indeed young, bold and assertive with tannins that made Alex's tongue tingle, but underneath was a promise of elegance that would emerge with time. As they moved deeper into the barrel room, Jamie shared stories about particularly challenging vintages, the science behind fermentation, and the art of blending. His passion was evident in every gesture, every explanation, and Alex found himself completely captivated, not just by the information, but by Jamie himself. There was something incredibly attractive about someone so devoted to their craft. And this, Jamie said, stopping before a small section of barrels marked with chalk symbols rather than printed labels, is my little corner of the winery. The owner lets me experiment with small batches, different techniques, unusual blends. It's where I get to play and sometimes discover something amazing. He drew another sample, this time from a barrel marked with what looked like a stylized flame. This one's special, he said, his voice softer now. I call it Phoenix. It's made from vines that survived a brush fire 2 years ago. The smoke stress on the grapes created something entirely unique. He poured a small amount into 2 glasses this time, keeping one for himself. I'd love your honest opinion. The wine was unlike anything Alex had tasted before. Complex layers of dark fruit and earth, with an unexpected smoky sweetness that lingered on the palate. It's incredible, Alex said truthfully. There's something almost resilient about it, like it's carrying the memory of what it survived. Jamie's eyes met his, holding his gaze with an intensity that made Alex's heart beat faster. Exactly, he said quietly. That's exactly what I was trying to capture. The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. Jamie was the first to look away, clearing his throat slightly. There's one more thing I'd like to show you, if you're interested. He led Alex to a small alcove at the far end of the barrel room, where a wooden table and 2 chairs were set up beside a stone wall lined with special reserve bottles. A single lantern cast a warm, intimate light over the space. This is where we do the final tastings before bottling, Jamie explained, selecting a bottle from the wall. The acoustics in this corner are perfect. You can actually hear the wine breathing if you listen closely enough. The bottle he chose had no label, just a simple red wax seal with the impression of a key pressed into it. This is the very last bottle of the first wine I ever made independently, Jamie said, a note of vulnerability entering his voice for the first time. I've been saving it for a special occasion. Alex felt the weight of what was being offered, not just a rare wine, but a piece of Jamie's journey, something personal and meaningful. Are you sure you want to open it now? He asked softly. Jamie looked at him for a long moment before answering. Some wines are meant to be saved, and some are meant to be shared at exactly the right moment. I think this is the right moment. With careful reverence, Jamie removed the wax seal and eased the cork from the bottle. The sound it made, that soft, promising sigh of release, seemed to echo in the quiet space between them. He poured a small amount into each of their glasses, the wine catching the lantern light like liquid garnets. To new beginnings, Jamie offered, raising his glass. Alex felt something shift inside him. A door long closed, creaking open just a fraction. To new beginnings, he echoed, touching his glass gently to Jamie's. The wine was extraordinary, a perfect balance of power and elegance, with a finish that evolved on the palate, revealing new dimensions with each passing second. They sipped in appreciative silence, the shared experience more intimate than words could have made it. When Alex finally spoke, his voice was hushed, as if afraid to break the spell of the moment. Thank you for sharing this with me. It's perfect. Jamie's eyes never left his as he replied. Sometimes you just know when something is right, when someone will understand what you're trying to say through the wine. The double meaning wasn't lost on Alex, and he felt a flutter of anticipation in his chest. Were they still talking about wine? Or was this conversation evolving into something else entirely? As they savored the special bottle, their conversation deepened, moving from wine to more personal territories, dreams deferred, paths not taken, moments that had shaped them. Alex found himself sharing things he rarely discussed, his creative aspirations that had been sidelined for a practical career, his fear that he'd played it too safe in life. Jamie listened intently, occasionally offering insights that suggested he understood exactly what Alex meant, even when the words came out imperfectly. In turn, Jamie spoke of his journey from corporate finance to winemaking, a dramatic career change prompted by a health scare in his mid-20s. Life's too short to spend it doing something that doesn't set your soul on fire, he explained, refilling their glasses with the last of the precious wine. Making wine connects me to something ancient and alive. Every vintage is a collaboration between human intention and natural forces beyond our control. There's something humbling and exhilarating about that. The bottle was nearly empty now, just a small amount remaining, perhaps enough for half a glass. Jamie swirled the bottle gently, capturing the last drops. There's barely enough for one more taste, he observed, a mischievous glint appearing in his eyes. We could share it. Before Alex could ask what he meant, Jamie raised the bottle to his lips and took the last sip, but didn't swallow. Instead, he leaned forward across the small table, his intention clear in his eyes. Alex felt a moment of surprise, followed by a surge of desire that took his breath away. He found himself leaning forward too, drawn by an invisible force he didn't want to, resist. Their lips met softly, and with the gentlest pressure, Jamie transferred the wine from his mouth to Alex's, an ancient, intimate way of sharing that was both sensual and profound. The wine tasted different this way, warmer, infused with the essence of Jamie himself. As Alex received this most personal of offerings, he felt the last of his hesitation dissolve. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing a little faster, eyes locked in silent communication. I've wanted to do that since you walked into the tasting room, Jamie admitted, his voice slightly rough with emotion. There was something about you, a depth beneath the surface. I couldn't let you leave without knowing if you felt it too. Alex's heart hammered in his chest, a mixture of exhilaration and vulnerability, making his voice unsteady as he replied. I felt it. I just didn't trust myself to recognize it anymore. He hesitated, then added honestly. After Emma left, I convinced myself I was bad at reading signals, that I'd imagined the connection we had. Jamie reached across the table, his fingers gently intertwining with Alex's. You didn't imagine this, he said softly. Whatever brought you here tonight? Coincidence, fate, a love of good wine. I'm grateful for it. The touch of Jamie's hand sent warmth spiraling through Alex's body, awakening feelings he'd thought were dormant, perhaps even dead. Part of him wanted to surrender to the moment completely, while another part, the cautious, wounded part, raised alarm bells. I should tell you, he said reluctantly. I'm not sure I'm ready for anything complicated. I'm still figuring out who I am after 5 years of being part of a we. Jamie's expression was understanding, without a trace of disappointment. I'm not asking for complicated, he assured Alex. Just the chance to explore whatever this is, at whatever pace feels right. No pressure, no expectations. He smiled, a hint of playfulness returning to his expression. Though I should warn you, I do make a habit of pursuing things I believe in, whether it's a challenging grape variety or a connection that feels significant. The honesty was refreshing, and Alex found himself smiling back, tension easing from his shoulders. I think I can handle that, he replied, surprising himself with how much he meant it. Something about Jamie made the idea of opening up again feel less frightening, more like an adventure worth embarking on. As the night deepened around them, they remained in their secluded corner of the barrel room, reluctant to break the magical bubble they'd created. Jamie shared stories of harvests past, the year a sudden rainfall threatened the entire crop, the time a family of bears decided the ripening grapes were their personal buffet. Alex found himself laughing more than he had in months, the sound echoing strangely in his ears, almost forgotten. In return, he shared his own stories, his disastrous first attempt at cooking a romantic dinner, which ended with takeout pizza and a minor kitchen fire. His secret hobby of writing poetry that no one had ever read. I'd like to read your poetry sometime, Jamie said, his voice sincere rather than teasing. Words that come from that place of truth, they're like wine in a way. Both are about distilling experience into something essential. The comparison struck Alex as profoundly beautiful, and he found himself nodding. Maybe someday, he replied, and was surprised to realize he meant it. The thought of sharing his most private creative expressions with Jamie didn't trigger the usual anxiety. Instead, it felt like a natural extension of the connection they were forming. Eventually, the lateness of the hour could no longer be ignored. Jamie glanced at his watch and sighed reluctantly. I should probably lock up properly, he admitted. The security system will auto-arm at midnight, and we're cutting it close. Alex nodded, equally reluctant to end their time together, but aware that all magical evenings eventually must conclude. As they made their way back through the barrel room toward the main building, their hands found each other in the dim light, fingers intertwining naturally. The simple contact sent a pleasant shiver up Alex's arm. At the main entrance, Jamie disabled the alarm and unlocked the door, holding it open for Alex. The night air was cool and crisp, stars scattered like diamond dust across the clear sky. The parking lot was empty except for their two cars, facing each other like old friends engaged in quiet conversation. So, Jamie said, his breath visible in the chilly air, I usually have Sundays and Mondays off. There's a hidden waterfall about an hour's hike from here. Not many people know about it. If you're free this Sunday. He let the invitation hang between them, giving Alex space to accept or decline without pressure. Alex felt a moment of hesitation, not because he didn't want to see Jamie again, but because saying yes meant actively choosing to move forward, to risk his heart again. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Taking a deep breath, he made his decision. I'd like that, he said, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. Text me the details? They exchanged phone numbers, the modern ritual feeling almost mundane after the intimacy they'd already shared. As Alex turned to go, Jamie caught his hand, gently pulling him back. One more thing, he said softly, and then he was leaning in, his free hand coming up to cup Alex's cheek as their lips met again. This time without the pretense of sharing wine, just the pure desire to connect. The kiss was gentle at first, a question being asked and answered, then deepening as Alex responded, his arms sliding around Jamie's waist to pull him closer. When they finally parted, both were slightly breathless, foreheads resting against each other in the cool night air. Just wanted to make sure you knew that was real, Jamie murmured, his thumb tracing the line of Alex's jaw. Not just the wine or the romantic setting. Alex smiled, feeling lighter than he had in months. I knew, he replied simply. I feel it too. Driving back to his hotel, Alex felt as though he was floating slightly above the road, his mind replaying every moment of the evening like a favorite film. He hadn't expected to find anything at Willowbrook Estate beyond a few good wines and perhaps a temporary distraction from his heartache. Instead, he'd found Jamie, or perhaps Jamie had found him, and with that unexpected connection, a spark of possibility had ignited in a heart he'd feared might stay cold forever. As he pulled into the hotel parking lot, his phone chimed with a text message. Opening it, he found a simple message from Jamie. The wine tastes better when shared. Looking forward to Sunday. Attached was a photo of the barrel room alcove where they'd sat, the lantern still glowing softly in the darkness. Alex smiled, typing back a response before heading inside. Some vintages are worth the wait. See you Sunday. For the first time in months, he fell asleep easily, his dreams filled not with painful memories of what he'd lost, but with tantalizing glimpses of what might be beginning. A connection as complex and promising as a perfectly crafted wine, full of depth and possibility, waiting to unfold its full character with time. 1 year later, Alex stood in the same spot where he'd first entered Willowbrook Estate's tasting room, marveling at how much had changed. The vineyard looked different in the spring. Vibrant green leaves replacing the autumn gold of his first visit, wildflowers dotting the edges of the property with splashes of color. But the most significant change wasn't in the landscape. It was in himself. The man who had arrived that night, wounded and guarded, seeking only temporary solace in good wine, had been transformed by the unexpected gift of new love. As if summoned by his thoughts, Jamie appeared in the doorway, his face lighting up with that same smile that had first captured Alex's attention. "Ready for our anniversary tour?" he asked, extending his hand. Alex took it without hesitation, their fingers fitting together with the familiar perfection that still made his heart skip. "Lead the way," he replied, following Jamie into the tasting room that had become a second home over the past year. On the counter sat a special bottle, the first vintage they had created together, a blend as complex and harmonious as their relationship had proven to be. The label bore a simple design, 2 wine glasses overlapping to form a heart, with the name, "Last Sip," printed in elegant script. Below it, in smaller letters, "For the moments that change everything." As Jamie uncorked the bottle and poured 2 glasses, Alex reflected on how love often appears when least expected, how healing can come from the most surprising sources, and how sometimes it takes a last sip shared between 2 strangers to begin a journey neither could have imagined. Jamie raised his glass, eyes full of love as he offered a toast, to finding each other. Alex touched his glass to Jamie's, the crystal singing with promise. "And to all the vintages yet to come," he added, knowing that like the finest wines, their love would only deepen and become more complex with time. Total _char_count, 18,864.